Okay, this is the first video for the AP Physics Advanced Kinematics Lab. This is just an overview of what you want to see at the end of the setup phase. And in the back there's three instruments that you'll be using to take measurements: a level, a tape measure marked off in centimeters, and that thing that looks like a clock, that's an angle finder. But taking the broader view, let's figure out how we get from the raw materials that I'm going to give you to the setup that you see now. Equally important, let me show you how it's used. Okay, now that everything's disassembled, let's just do a quick parts inventory. You got your laboratory stand here. Right next to it is a test tube clamp and the angle finder. This white strip, although it might be a little hard to see with the lighting, that's a tape measure marked off in centimeters. And this thing here, this rail, is called an optics bench. You got a couple random little bits here. We got a slider for the optics bench, a paper clip which I'll be using as a pin to pull in and out of parts, in and out of some other parts, so I'll be calling that a pin from now on. You got a rubber ball extracted from an old mouse, two rubber bands. Then you've got this piece of Schedule 200 PVC that's got one large hole drilled in it in this direction, and then in the perpendicular direction, might be kind of hard to see, you have a small pinhole. Take a guess what goes in the pinhole. Alright, and right behind that you've got a level. Yours might not look exactly like this, but it's your basic spirit level. And then probably the newest device that you might not be familiar with. This is called a photo gate. Actually, technically speaking, this device here with the stand and the complicated looking base is called a photo gate timer. And then this other thing attached to it by the wire is called an accessory head. We will be using both of them, and they will be attached to each other using this big stereo cable. Now, the photogate timers are rather interesting devices. They are used to time events, and basically the way they work is that each of these C-shaped parts contains that's an infrared LED. And then this slot over here contains an infrared sensor. So it's basically like a little infrared trip line. Anytime something goes between the C-shaped part, now watch the timer, an object travels between the C-shaped part, it will trigger an event. Now in this case, you can start it by one interruption of the beam and then stop it with an interruption of the other beam. Or any two interruptions will trigger this photogate timer in this mode. Specifically, the mode you want is called pulse mode. Once again, that's pulse mode. There's three modes: pendulum, pulse, and gate. We want pulse. And what that does is, in pulse mode, it starts the timer with one interruption and stops it with a second interruption. Either head can be interrupted, it doesn't matter. So, as you can tell, this gets down to, this reads 2.978 seconds. That gets you down to 1/1000th of a second. This is way more accurate than a human being with a stopwatch. Human beings with a stopwatch are typically off by somewhere between 0.2 seconds and 0.5 seconds. There's a little bit of delay in our reaction time. So this is a much more accurate way of timing two events, as long as those events can be triggered by an object moving through the infrared beams. And I'll show you how that all works once we get the setup together.